Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, lifelong Red Wings fan and author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth. It's a book that is available on Audible or Apple Books in this new and updated audio edition, so if you haven't checked it out already, I invite you to do so. I'm coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State, tucked away back here in the Pacific Northwest. Folks, we're at over 1,200 subscribers for the channel, so thank you all. It's my goal to be at 2,000. Now, I know about 800 subscribers in basically 7 weeks is not an easy task. It's going to be a tall order, but I feel like we can do it. We've steamrolled quite a few times over the last few months. We've nearly tripled in subscribership over that time in the offseason. So if we can get another strong push forward over these next 7 weeks, I think we can do the same thing. Also, please leave your messages on the message board. I would love for some interaction. Yesterday's show only had one comment, and I know that the comments, that's a good way to drive viewership, but also it's a good way for interactions. It's a good way to kind of sit there and get into a debate with each other. People check back in after lunch. What did so-and-so say about me? Well, that's not going to stand. I don't know. But I feel like there's plenty enough discussion to be had as we get into these later stages of the offseason and start really now, obviously, the end of the tunnel is closer to the preseason than it was to the end of the regular season last season. So we're getting closer and closer to things being more relevant as far as Hockey Town goes and actually returning to the ice. So let's see if we can get the subscribers up, let's see if we can get the views up, and let's see if we can get this interaction and banter up as well. We'll start today by talking about a couple of things, consolidating them into one headline. First of all, it was announced basically that, or revealed I would say, that Turnkey ZRG is the firm that has been hired by the Red Wings to search for a general manager. Now, Turnkey ZRG, back in 2016, helped find the president for the Golden Knights. That's Kerry Bubbles. He was their president for about 9 years and stepped down last year. Obviously, anybody who knows about the Golden Knights, fastest expansion team ever to win a Stanley Cup championship. Now, there's going to be somebody who wants to argue that, I'm sure, on the message board and say, no, the Edmonton Oilers did in 5 years, whereas the Golden Knights did in 6. I'm going to argue the fact that the Edmonton Oilers, being a WHA imported team, an already established team, mind you, with Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky notwithstanding, is coming into the league. That is not an expansion team. That is a team that has been playing for several years amongst other competitors like the Winnipeg Jets, Indianapolis Checkers, I think they were, or Indianapolis Racers. There's a couple of teams in there. Checkers, I think, were one of the teams from Indianapolis eventually, but not to mention Quebec Nordiques and everybody else that came in with that. The Hartford Whalers. Let's not forget about the Whalers. Let's not forget about Gordie Howe, obviously big name in Detroit. And so you get this whole league coming in. You're not going to convince me that the Edmonton Oilers were going to be considered an expansion team. I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen. You can debate it all you want. The fastest expansion team ever to win a Stanley Cup championship is Vegas Golden Knights. 6 years, and that's probably never going to be topped. Honestly, let's just face it. But that's what I'm saying. Kerry Bubbles is somebody who was vetted and brought in to basically be the president of that organization that went to the Stanley Cup final in its very first year as an expansion team. And so they obviously have a good track record, this Turnkey ZRG. Let's see how they do for us. I think they were also linked with the general manager search for the Tigers. But moving along, talking about another article that was put out, Frederico O'Donnell of Bola VIP says, according to a report, the Red Wings' best option is to make amends with their captain. Probably not. Let's just face it. That's probably not going to be happening. I do not think. I kind of just wonder if people are just throwing words out just to say, hey, how are they going to land? I don't think their best option is to make amends. He needs to make amends with plenty of other things, including his teammates, if this is going to happen. Like, he's going to need to buy them all cars or pay for their soda for the year or something. But let's say this, just saying best option forward is to make amends. There's sometimes that there's a bell that cannot be unrung. And I feel like perhaps this is a bell that will not be unrung with a lot of players. There's going to be a lot of disgruntled behavior coming out of the rest of the locker room. I think saying something like that, realizing that training camp is only a few weeks away, is just an easy thing to kind of toss down a hallway and making a statement like that. I don't think that's necessarily a design. I think that we've just been waiting for a general manager. I think that there's probably plenty of deals that are they're stacking up on the desk of this, this vacant desk of the general manager. There's plenty of contracts that are probably stacking up there, possible deals, possible agreements that will get Larkin out of town. So let's not resort to sitting there saying that the best option is to make amends. I don't think that's the best option whatsoever. In fact, I think that's one of my least favorite options as far as Dylan Larkin with this team. So nice try. Let's move on. Just talking about our camp, looking at some of our players in our satchel. This one's Dylan James. He was a second-round pick in 2022. I think he was the number 40 overall pick for the Red Wings. Number 40 overall in the draft. He was their second rounder. So he's a second rounder. He hasn't seen a lick of action because he's been attending the University of North Dakota. He was drafted as an 18-year-old, so four years ago. He's at 22 right now. He did great in Sioux City Musketeer, with the Sioux City Musketeers, getting drafted. Finally saw some action with the Griffins last season, including one playoff game. He's 22 right now. I think this is one of those, we were talking yesterday about the system being more towards younger players instead of older. I wouldn't necessarily call him older just yet, but if he's only got 2 games or so, experience with the Griffins, he is going to be one of the older players by the time, if they even bring him up to the major level. So I don't know. I feel like this is a guy that we need to have room for on the Griffins so that we can push up the other players that are maybe a year or 2 younger. You don't want to begrudge somebody for attending university all those 4 years and not playing competitively, still playing for the college team, but not playing at the Griffins level or anything like that. He's coming in at 22. We'd see him at 23 or 24, maybe even making any headway to move up to the top level, probably maybe not even then. And by the time he's 26, we're not really thinking, hey, is this guy coming down to our roster, right? He's a wing, he's not going to have too much tread left on the tires for another, after that few years. Now all of a sudden he's an old man, right? So I think some of these timetables, some of these timelines really get disrupted, and I think that these windows really don't get taken advantage of. These windows, they don't act upon them while they're in the window, and the window closes. And I know that the saying is, when a door opens or a door closes, a window opens. Well, these windows are closing, and I don't see these doors opening, at least as far as these players really having any shot at the NHL level. Let's just put it that way, which is a shame because he was a second-round pick in 2022. The fact that he was a second-round pick that far back and he's barely seen any kind of action at the AHL level is kind of, to me, a waste, honestly. Let's just put it that way. When you think second-rounder, you are thinking that we'll be seeing him in the show soon enough, and we haven't seen him anywhere close to the show. We've seen him in the sub-show and just barely. So I think that Dylan James, now that he's graduated, now that he's doing whatever he's doing, I don't see him in Detroit anytime soon. I see him basically being like a Crash Larson for Grand Rapids. If you want to make all the points, rack them up like that. But like we already said, that's not the system they're looking to go to. They're looking to get younger in the Grand Rapids organization rather than older. But he may be that anomaly. He may stick around, and we may see him make all kinds of moves. He may make a lot of waves and start moving up to the big leagues, but I just don't see it. I don't see the path that he's taken being one that's conducive to him being anywhere on the Red Wings within the next 3 years. And by that time, he's 25, and we've already got an 18-year-old or 19-year-old that we've said, you know what, we're just going to advance this guy up the ranks a lot faster than the 25-year-old, and there he's out of a job. I'm just saying, this is just the way it seems. These windows close really quick, and nothing is taken advantage of in the timeline that it needs to be. So we are going to skip over out of Detroit just for a minute. We're going to talk about basically the New York Rangers. Now I'm going to read off a bunch of names because there's been a ton of moves made. Tons of players going out, tons of players going in. Their moves started back in the regular season last year when Artemi Panarin went to the Kings. That was one of the bigger, moves. That was one of the bigger discussions early in the season, long before the trade deadline. I think this was back in if it was late 2025, maybe early 26. I'm not sure, but outside of our Panarin, we also have after the season, Jonathan Quick retired, 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Congratulations on your retirement, Jonathan Quick. Berard went to the Habs, Edstrom to the Preds, Väisänen to the Bruins, Fix Wakinski to the Canucks, Sheary to the Sabres, Trocheck, pretty much one of the biggest offseason moves, going to the Mammoth, Mackey to the Blackhawks, Brodzinski to the Caps, Borgen to the Bruins, and Fitzgerald to the Panthers. Now coming in, that's a lot going out. Coming in, not as much coming in, but still one of the biggest players coming in. Probably I would say the biggest headline player coming in would be Pavel Dorofeev signing with the Rangers to that big deal, that big contract, and really not having to give up much to get him. So Dorofeev, also Trudeau came from the Habs, Rizzo from the Preds, Korpisalo from the Bruins, Veleno, remember him, from the Habs, Bjorkstrand from the Lightning, Dursey and Baudouin from the Mammoth, Pettersson from the Canucks, Delgaiso from the Habs, and Cholowski from the Devils. So that is a lot of new tape to be put over locker rooms and new numbers to be put over locker rooms over there in Madison Square Garden dressing room. I'll just tell you, that was a lot of in and a lot of out. So I'm curious to see how the Rangers kind of show up. Feel like they've been really quick to pull the trigger on moves and get players out of there over the last 2 or 3 seasons. They've kind of their forecast for the season and their possibilities of playoffs. It seems like get shorter and shorter into the season when they realize, okay, we're gonna try basically for something to move into next season, be a better contender for next season, scrap this season. They've seemed to have done that a lot, and this is a team that was a President's Trophy winner like within the last 3 or 4 years, okay? So they've had a lot of moves in and out. They've had a lot of big players going elsewhere. Jacob Trouba going over to Ducks. Now he's going to be playing for the Sharks. But seeing players go out like that, Vincent Trocheck's another one. That's probably Panarin's another one. So you see big names that have been there and just not. I think Keandre Miller used to play for the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken. He went over to Carolina and wins a Stanley Cup. So we have some of the big, those are 4 names right there out of an organization that were basically names you build around. So now we're trying to find different names to build around and be a competitive team once again. So we'll have to see how the Rangers fare in the Metropolitan. I feel like they're still going to be pretty much farther down there. I think the Devils have made more moves. The Rangers and Islanders may be in a battle for who's the best team out of New York, really. That's kind of what it might come down to. And when I say New York, I mean not necessarily in the Metropolitan, really, is what I'd be saying, because Buffalo probably is making the case for best team in New York right now as far as the state goes. Anyway, today's Tantrum Tuesday, so I'm going to go back. Saw a little story on a feed yesterday, and I just want to bring everybody's attention back to it, because we all remember the Bruce brothers, Bob Probert and Joey Kosher, going at it in a time where really a lot of teams only had one enforcer. The Red Wings had 2. Probert moves on to Chicago. Kosher is out of the league basically in the 96-97 season. This is the way the situation is. So neither Bruce brother is in Detroit, right? So Bob Probert, as a Blackhawk, comes back. This game was in December of 96. They'd already played each other once in the season, early in the season, and I believe Chicago won that one. I'm not sure, but December 12th, this game was the one that was won by the Red Wings 6-2. But Probert's back in a Blackhawks uniform, and he's got 2 fighting penalties in the first period, as well as a roughing penalty. So there's 12 penalty minutes right there. in the first period alone. Very quiet in the second period, no penalties whatsoever. But 6 minutes into the third, this is when all hell starts breaking loose. He gets 32 minutes worth of penalties, pretty much right there in one sitting, because it was a fight. Okay, attempt to injure, that gives you 10. A misconduct, that's another 10, and a game misconduct, there's another 10, plus the 2-minute roughing that brought all this up to speed. So here he is gooning it up and kind of having his way against former teammates. Some of these guys were still on the team when he was still on the team, right? So what does Bowman do? He says, let's get a little toughness going into this team. Little disappointment the season before, basically winning 62 games, not even making it to Stanley Cup final. So Bowman, the master, the master builder, says, let's get Kosher up here. So Kosher gets a job. He's back in the NHL and he's back on the Red Wings. So this was all orchestrated by Probert and Kosher, by the way. They were dear friends, and I think it was one of those ways. It's like, I need to get back in this league. Probert says, hold my beer, and the rest is history. So obviously Kosher comes back and plays 34 games for the Wings that year, and then he plays in 20 of the playoff games. I think he missed one or two games or one game in the Mighty Ducks series, but pretty much played throughout the whole series, and including the Colorado one. And guess what? Raises a Stanley Cup. I will say, after Kosher got brought into the Red Wings, the next time they played the Blackhawks, those two got to fighting pretty much 2 minutes into the game. And it was kind of one of those, thanks for getting me back into the league. Obviously they're known competitors, and they know the score, basically, when it comes to the unspoken rules of hockey. And that's exactly what happened. Kosher had to answer Probert on the ice for all the things that he did in that game back in December. Obviously attempting to injure a player, that's the unspoken rule. You got to go after him. You got to have some kind of retribution. Of course, it's your friend. It's a friend who basically got you your job back. And of course, they still remain friends even after that. But that's one of the beautiful things about hockey is, even though you see these scraps where these guys are going at it and just punching each other mercilessly, a lot of times they do it as a favor to each other. And you even see it sometimes after the fact when they have those fights. They acknowledge each other when they're not spitting angrily. There's the other times where they're sitting there looking across each other in the penalty box, kind of like with the nod, like, thank you. Thanks for that. Unspoken rule sometimes. It happens. Beautiful story. I would say it's a beautiful story. It won't go in any Hallmark cards anytime soon, but I love that. I love that Probert basically behind the scenes brings his friend, basically is indirectly responsible for bringing his friend back into the league, and they thank each other, or one thanks the other by basically trying to punch his lights out the next time. And that's just endearment, I would say, in this league. So this has been Red Wings Daily, folks, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, and we'll have to see what happens. If anything transpires, we'll see if the general manager search yields anything, if Turnkey ZRG has any prospects, or if we see any news. In the meantime, LGRW from the P&W.